It's been a tough year in my pepper garden. I had a late hailstorm in June that decimated most of my plants, and then those that were trying to recover got hit with a bad year for broad mites. It's been rough. But one thing that has really been my saving grace and made me really love my garden this year are tomatoes. Micro dwarf tomatoes, to be exact. In this video, I'm gonna do a taste test of 8 different types of micro dwarf tomatoes that I grew this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about just how I grew them and why I'm gonna be planting micro dwarf tomatoes specifically every year from here on out. But primarily we're gonna eat tomatoes and we're gonna try them. I'm gonna do my best to describe their flavor, their texture, etc. Usually I eat peppers, because that's my favorite thing to grow. But today it's tomatoes. What are micro dwarf tomatoes? The simplest way to say it, they're tiny little tomato plants, foot tall in a lot of cases, even less in some cases, a little bit taller in some cases, but in general, very small tomato plants. Typically they're all cherry or plum type tomatoes, and they are super cool. They don't get big. They're not a vining type indeterminate tomato. They are determinate little bushy tomato plants, and I love them. I started growing micro dwarf tomatoes maybe 3 or 4 seasons back. I'd never heard of them before. I actually heard about them on a podcast. I think it was Joe Gardner originally, and I was like, I gotta find these things. Found out a couple of my friends in the pepper lovers community and just one of my favorite seed shops in general also, Forgotten Heirlooms, had a bunch of them for sale. Matt's Peppers had some of them for sale a couple of years ago, and I bought seeds and I've been growing them ever since. What I like about them is they don't need a lot of space. They don't need deep roots. You don't have to put a big trellis or a cage around them. You'll want to give them a little bit of support because they put on so many dang tomatoes that they just tip over sometimes from their own weight. But that's a good problem to have. I grew them this year in these elevated beds. They're not raised beds, there is a difference. I'm one of those people, don't call it a raised bed. Raised beds sit on top of the soil and intermix. This is a container. It just happens to be raised up off the ground. So I get why people would call it a raised bed, it's just not a raised bed. Whatever. They have been perfect. They are directly in the southern exposure of my backyard. They have basically no shade all day, and they've done great. I'm amazed. A lot of times if I try to put plants in this spot on my deck, they burn in the sun. Almost all of my micro dwarfs did great, even after they got kind of banged up by that hailstorm. So most of them bounced back. A few of them didn't do so hot, but I chalked that up to early season damage. Some of these are really cool, and I've got them in cups here because I was out harvesting and I didn't want to mix them up because in a lot of ways it's like, hey, it looks like a tomato. But this one, the Blaue Zimmertomate, something along those lines. It's German. I'll put the names and where I got the seeds for if I remember on the screen. But it's really cool. It grows about a foot, little over a foot tall, and it puts on these really dark purple, almost black tomatoes. As they start to ripen, they get a little bit orange and red in splotches. They never fully turn red, and so sometimes all you still see on the outside is the black half or the purple half, and you don't realize that facing inside on the plant, you'll see that it's ripe. So I've found over the years that the best way to tell if the Blaue Zimmertomate, or whatever they're called, are ripe is just give them a gentle little squeeze and they'll give a little bit. So with no further ado, we're gonna go through one at a time and I'll tell you how they taste. So Blaue Zimmertomate. Very goofy. Pretty nice inside, very fleshy. Has a very mild flavor in that it's not really strong sweet, it's not really strong tart, it doesn't have any earthiness to it really. It's very classic tomato. It tastes like a freshly sliced tomato, but from the garden, not from the store. Super juicy. I hope that sound was picked up on the mic because you could hear how juicy and squeaky it was. Up next, we have Bullfinch. Some Bullfinch. Cute little red cherry tomatoes. They don't get super deep red, kind of an orangish red, but I love these. Again, I've grown these for several years. Plant did pretty well this year. A lot of it was damaged by the hailstorm. It's bounced back pretty well. I have harvested off of this quite a few times, so it's not like this was, hey, all I got was this little handful. I've been harvesting these for probably the last 6 weeks, and I can go out every few days and get, a bowl this big full off of these plants. It's awesome. So, Bullfinch. Okay, so good. That is like candy. Very sweet. Tiniest little bit of tartness. Not as fleshy as the Blaue, but still, it's not a weak tomato. It's got a good firmness to it. It doesn't, just splat and become liquid. It's almost like a little bit of an apple or a pear kind of sweetness, but very strong. The back of my tongue after I swallowed is just still, it feels sweet, like I've been eating candy. Bullfinch. These are perfect for tossing on salad. People who are like, oh, I don't know if I want tomatoes. Have them try one. They'll want tomatoes. This one is new to me this year. I'm pretty sure I got these seeds from Forgotten Heirlooms. It's called Balcony ELO or Elo 3. Yellow. We have now moved into the yellows. I love these little guys. The plant did really well. If this cup was full, I could say I've probably easily taken 6 to 8 of these cups off of that plant already this season, and I'm going to get more off of it before the summer's done. While they are determinate tomatoes, it seems like all of these micro dwarfs actually just keep putting on more and more fruit as the summer goes on. It's not like they produce once and stop, which is a little bit unique. So Balcony ELO or Balcony Elo 3. Let's see how this guy tastes. Whoa. Like I said, this is a new one this year. But for the most part, I haven't been paying attention to what's what. I've just been putting them all in one harvest basket, so I can't say like I specifically knew what this one tasted like. Again, I'm gonna stop because I gotta eat all these, but that is seriously like candy. Almost a little bit citrusy, very sweet, a tiny bit tart, great flavor, great texture too, like really, really good. Just that perfectly moist fruit and a little bit of structure in it so that it's soft, but it doesn't just dissolve in your mouth. Really, really good. All right, up next is, I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, Lille Lise or Lise, Lille Lise, Lisa, I don't know. Lillelise. But these are one that I got from Forgotten Heirlooms. Forgotten Heirlooms, I'm pretty darn sure. If not, I'll like bleep that out and put where I actually got it across the screen. Another little red cherry tomato though. I have grown these the last couple of years. They are very similar, I think, to the Bullfinch in their sweetness and flavor, if I remember correctly. So let's find out. I was wrong. So that has more what I would call that mellow traditional tomato flavor. Nice texture to the flesh. It was actually probably the stiffest of those that I've eaten so far today. Maybe that one just wasn't completely ripe. A little bit of sweetness. It's very similar to that, again, like that classic tomato taste, but there's a nice kind of plum almost undertone of sweetness to it. Very tasty. Probably best used in things like salads. If you want to slice them up, put them on your tacos, they'd be really good like that too, because they won't just melt and put water all over your taco, right? You can actually have chunks of tomato with these. So Lille Lise is what I'm gonna go with. Lille Lise, I don't know. Very good micro dwarf tomato. All right, and now's where things get a little bit weird. Not really, but this is Orange Russian. I have not saved seeds over the years from these tomatoes. This will be my first year attempting to save seeds from my own tomatoes. But this is Orange Russian, and it's red. The previous years I grew Orange Russian. You might be surprised, but it was orange. So I don't know if something happened this year, if it's environmental, if maybe somehow a wrong seed slipped into the packet that I got. I don't remember where I got these ones from, so I'll try and look it up and put it on the screen, but I may not have noted that down. The red Orange Russian. Cool looking plant. Again, it put on quite a bit of tomatoes. Held up really well to the southern sun, so no complaints there. Let's see how the Orange Russian that's red actually tastes. Holy juice. Very, very juicy. A little bit softer flesh. It reminds me a little bit of peaches and apple skin, right? The skin is just the skin of the tomato that I'm tasting. And a little bit of a peach sweetness. Kind of tart, and maybe it's the texture of the flesh being really soft too, and you get that really perfectly ripe peach that's nice and soft and just kind of melts a little bit in your mouth. That's what the Orange Russian tasted like today. All right, here's another one I've grown the last 2 years. This is a yellow. I'm gonna get a big one out of here. Gelbe, or Gelbe, I don't know, Gelbe. So this plant did not do great for me last year, and then this year it's just been putting on a ton of these decently sized yellow cherry tomatoes. I love the look of them. They've all had this really long, I guess this is the calyx on a tomato. Again, I'm a pepper guy, so I don't really study tomatoes too much. But I like it. Looks great. Really bright yellow color on them though, and in the sunlight in the morning, they just shine. It's like looking at little like lemon candies. So, Gelbe, let's see how they taste. Okay. Very juicy. They're all juicy, right? If you've grown tomatoes at home, they're all gonna be very juicy. You know, That was a lot like eating a kind of a green or a yellow grape. Not a tart sweetness necessarily, but just a little bit of that grape and almost less grape and more wine, like almost a Sauvignon Blanc kind of flavor on that, which is very interesting. Not too much of that classic tomato flavor, like almost none. If you don't like tomatoes and you're like, oh, I don't like the way they taste, the Gelbe might be the tomato for you to try, because it doesn't have your regular red slicing tomato flavor. It just tastes like a grape or a glass of wine. That's pretty cool. Now it really is going to get a little weird. So this is the Fuzzy Wuzzy tomato. The Fuzzy Wuzzy Microdwarf tomato. The Fuzzy Wuzzy Microdwarf tomato. Okay, I got it. The Fuzzy Wuzzy Microdwarf tomato is one that I've grown now 2 years in a row, but last year it didn't fruit for me. It did not do well last year. This year, not only did it put on these awesome variegated striped orange and yellow tomatoes, the plant itself is fuzzy. Like, it's fuzzy. It looks fake. It's awesome. At this point in the season, it's not looking its sharpest, but earlier this year, it was really, really doing well. It is starting to fight a little bit of end of season disease, you know, some powdery mildew and things like that. The tomato blight's gonna hit all of these guys before too long. But I love the look of these fruits. They are so cool. They look not real almost, right? It's almost like a marble or some sort of a toy with the pattern on it, and just how shiny they are. The fruit itself is almost a little fuzzy feeling. It's not super smooth like a regular tomato. These though, the flavor, almost tart, almost, I almost said the B word, almost bitter, but not in a bad way. Like bitter in that, you know, you look forward to a cold, crisp beer. But look how fleshy they are. Hopefully this comes in. I can't see if it's in the camera, so. That whole inside is just solid though. It's really, really fleshy. These are like, you could fill up eating a handful of these because there's no waste. They are juicy, but they have a really good texture to them, a lot of structure to that flesh that you gotta chew. I don't know, I'm digging that though. That's different, right? Everything I've eaten so far has pretty much been either really sweet or kind of that mellow tomato flavor. That says something, right? You feel it, you taste it, you notice it right away. So Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy is now an excellent microdwarf tomato. And last but not least, we have another one that was new to me this year. Again, I'm pretty sure I got it from Forgotten Heirlooms. This is the House Microdwarf tomato. I can't say enough about how impressive this plant was in terms of its growth and its production. I actually planted 2 of these right next to each other, this close to each other in the ground. Normally I wouldn't do that with tomato plants, but I thought, let's do a little experiment this year. What a good idea that was. To the point where I'm gonna try, I think, double planting all of my microdwarf tomatoes next year and see if I get similar results. But look at this stinking plant. This thing is a beast. It put on, well, these things, there's 2 of them here, right? But it's been putting out tomatoes faster than I can use them, faster than I can eat them, to the point where, like, I set this one aside because it's overripe, it's squishy. I've got 3 of these cups overflowing just this week. Every week, I get at least that much off of these plants. And this is going on like 6 weeks. I've been harvesting off of that thing since June. It is now mid-August. So, House, if they taste good, may give the Balcony Elo a running as my current favorite microdwarf tomato, because what's better than having something that tastes great, grows great, and puts on a ton of fruit? Nothing, right? That's the dream. So let's find out. House microdwarf tomato, how do you taste? Okay. Very, very sweet. Again, like candy. Almost berry and watermelon kind of flavors. A hint of that traditional tomato flavor, but not much. It doesn't, you're not gonna bite into that instantly and go, oh, it tastes like a tomato, great. You're gonna bite into it instantly and go, Oops. So juicy, so sweet. It really is. The first thing that I thought of was like strawberry, but it's almost more of a blueberry type of berry flavor, and a little bit of that mellow watermelon sweetness with all of that juice. That is phenomenal. So I'm in a tough spot. Balcony Elo or house? Which one is my favorite micro dwarf tomato this year? I think the answer to that is all 8 of these. Honestly, no. Now I think probably my favorite right now is house. Not because it actually tastes noticeably better than the Balcony Elo, but when you combine the great taste and the incredible production of this plant, it is music to a gardener's ears and to my mouth and to my tummy. You know, since my garden didn't do great this year, I'm super excited to have found that these micro dwarf tomatoes did really, really well. I highly recommend everybody tries growing micro dwarf tomatoes at least once. They grow really well in small pots too. You can put them in like a 2-gallon, 3-gallon pot if you want to, like a grow bag or something. You know, like an 8 to 10 inch pot will grow a decent looking micro dwarf tomato plant. You do still have to do some of the common tomato maintenance, right? So you want to pull off any of those lower branches so that they're not in contact with the soil as much as possible. Try and prevent diseases from spreading up earlier in the season. Tomatoes are one of those things where I just kind of accept it. At the end of the season, they're going to start to get beat up. They're not going to look great. But these are doing surprisingly well. I'm going to leave links below to the places I like to get these. Matt's Peppers, Forgotten Heirlooms. I'm pretty sure that covers everything I eat here today, so that's awesome. Just a reminder that while sometimes things don't go the way you want in part of your garden, maybe another part of it's going to thrive. Or maybe you're going to find a new plant that you didn't really think would be your focus, but when everything else got destroyed by hail, you're like, hey, I'm going to start to love these little guys. And that really has happened here with micro dwarf tomatoes for me. I know you're on video, they just look like little cups, but man, this is a beautiful bounty of tomatoes that I'm going to be enjoying for the rest of this summer. I also use these to make hot sauces, specifically my taco sauce recipes. If you're interested in getting some Boss taco sauce, I will leave a link below to that as well. I have a mild and a medium version. Medium's actually pretty hot. If you don't like really spicy stuff, heads up. But those both feature these very tomatoes. So you want to eat my garden? Order some hot sauce. You want to help me out? Hit like on this video, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. Really want to keep growing my love for gardening and my love for sharing gardening with y'all. I do have a lot of peppers coming up still though, so don't worry. There will be a lot of featured plant videos, there will be pepper taste testing, and I'm going to kind of do a truncated special series, or maybe just one good long video on the humble jalapeno. Much more to come this season. I hope your garden is doing great. Remember, plants help us grow.